Welcome to the Wild Type Podcast. I'm Neptune the Chameleon.
I'm Lyssa Lizards.
And we're your reptile girlies. So I was very excited to wear my pink sweater. And then I walk in today and you're wearing a hot pink sweater, which makes my pink sweater look like a gray grandma sweater.
It is.
Right here.
I'm sorry. You said that was pink. I was like, I don't really think it's pink.
It's pink until it's next to your pink sweater, which is like on level 10.
Mine is aggressively pink. I will give you that. That is definitely, it's like a muted pastel. It's like a lighter, it's almost like I would say it's close to like heather gray with some like red undertones.
It's got some white in it. It's definitely pink, literally next to anything besides.
Except mine. So for
your sweater.
For any of our listeners who are not watching on YouTube, I am wearing an aggressively bright pink sweater that has a smiley face on it.
It brings you nothing but joy. It's very close to my nail color, actually.
Yes, it is. Oh, it perfectly matches your nails.
Which is very pink, which just goes to show. It's like the Pepto-Bismol pink.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
It's like a true...
Mm-hmm. It's like cotton candy pink. But like times 10. Yes. Mm-hmm. It's the definition of like dopamine dressing with like the giant smiley face too.
Yeah, no,
Makes me happy.
Fantastic. I just went,
Oh, just kidding. I'm not wearing pink anymore.
My pink just became less pink. But
it's still a very cute sweater though.
Thank you.
It is.
From my grandma.
Oh, really?
For my birthday, but I picked it out. So.
Okay.
But thanks, Grandma. Also something we were chatting about before the podcast. Yes. I didn't know this, but you talk. Okay, I'm not even going to cue you up. You just talk about it. I found this hilarious.
So funny. So per usual, I am usually running a smidge late, a smidge behind. This is part of my brand. It's who I am.
Yeah.
It's actually hereditary. Every woman in my family is always running 5 minutes behind. It is what it is. But when you came over, I usually am like finishing my makeup in my bathroom or something. So she usually has to like come into Logan a nice room. And so you had never seen my red light therapy lamp.
No.
I have a red light therapy lamp and I like turn it on for like, as we know, I'm in my wellness journey. I'm trying to like figure out all my like uterine problems, and like getting better sleep is a big part of some of that and like all this stuff. So I've been doing a little bit of like 30-minute red light therapy every night. But the funny part is you had a very similar reaction kind of to like what Logan had.
Well, I asked if it was like a little heater.
Yes.
Because I know your guys' room in the winter gets chilly. So like I wouldn't put it past you to have like a little heater on like your nightstand or something to like keep you warm. And it kind of has like the cage around the bulb that looks a little heater.
100%.
So that's what 100%. I thought it was.
So she asked if it was a heater and I started cracking up because it's supposed to be like really good for your skin. It's supposed to like help like kind of like your circadian rhythm, like winding down for the night instead of having like the bright LED lights and stuff like that.
Makes
sense.
So
that's what it's for. But both you and Logan have made the same comment of it being kind of a heater, and it does get really warm. So that's not invalid. That's very true. But Logan has literally made fun of me because when I'm laying under it at night, like under my little red light lamp, he's like, how are you doing on your rock under your basking lamp, babe? How you doing over there? I'm just basking in my sunlight for the day, which is funny because, you know, we also don't recommend red bulbs. And here I am using a red bulb for myself.
Yep. No, I think that's great. I think all of us need to internalize a little lizard basking.
Yes.
Because I definitely, in like the summertime especially, will go outside 100%. For like 10, 15 minutes and just like recharge.
You need that vitamin D3. You need that.
Ding, 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 ding. All right, back inside.
Yeah, 100%.
Before I start sweating.
I think at all times, we all desire to be a lizard basking on a rock under the sun.
Living the dream.
That's like the goal.
Yeah. So I thought that was funny.
No, that was great.
So the main focus of today's episode is one that we've alluded to many times and one I'm very excited for, especially as I'm entering my journey as a future breeder. So very much like in the mindset of babies.
I mean, you're currently putting together like 40 baby enclosures. So it's incredibly relevant.
It's a process. My human friends are giving birth to human babies, and then I'm over here preparing for lizard babies. So honestly, that's just the life stage I'm in.
It's perfect. It's the best life stage.
It's good. I just want to be a lizard. I'm having little lizard babies. Yes.
You're about to be a lizard grandma.
Fully in it.
We're so excited.
But there are a lot of differences between baby reptiles and adult reptiles.
It's a huge like adjustment.
Yes. And so I think we first have to ask the question, what are we considering a baby reptile?
So true.
Because you have like a hatchling.
Yeah.
Or like a couple month old.
It's so funny because this is also relevant to human babies of like people, like the newborn stage is technically only supposed to be like the first 2 months. So like the hatchling stage is what? It's like, it's very like, it's very specific.
Yes.
But I think it kind of depends on the species a little bit. But at the same, like for me personally, someone who keeps like a variety of species, I would say that like a baby reptile is anything under like 7 or 8 months. Like that is around the time I would say they're usually coming into like the full grown size, with the exception of like snakes, because snakes take much longer to usually grow to their full potential.
Yeah, I would say most reptiles that I'm familiar with is like the 12-month mark, is you're like an adult, and then baby would be, okay, let's work backwards. So hatchling would be like 0 to like I would say 3 months.
Yeah.
And then your baby, right?
And I would say like baby would be like 3 months up until like maybe 8 or 9-ish. And then after that, I consider that like the 8 or 9 month mark to more so be like the subadult range.
Okay.
Right? And like chameleons in particular.
I know have like juveniles in there. So I would say juvenile is like 5 to like 7,
That's
8
so
months.
True. I forgot about that.
And then you'd have like subadult being under a year. So it's very variable. It's not like there's an exact number. But most of our advice is going to be for babies, not hatchlings, because hatchlings is very much in breeder sphere, which there's going to be different considerations, and like happy to chat through that, especially as I'm getting ready to like prepare for true hatchlings, true babies. So when we say babies, we're thinking like
3 or 4 months to
depending on the species
to like a year. Like I would say around that range. So good note.
Yes. Is that pretty common for snakes to be like 3 or 4 months old before they're like going to new homes?
Usually, I would say. I mean, like when I bought Hazel, I think she was 6 months old. When I bought Tarzan, he was 3 or 4 months old. When I bought Taz, I think he was younger. I think he was like 3 or 4 months old. So I think like it's really common for them to be sold around the like 3 to 5 month mark.
Okay,
but
that makes sense.
Sometimes depending on like when they were hatched or when they were born or whatever, like it can kind of vary. Because for example, Hazel was 6 months, but I got her in an expo, so that breeder was probably holding on to her a little longer because of so it's just like
circumstances and stuff. Yeah,
it just varies.
Okay, but it still falls in the same part of like lizards of typically when you would get them. So
the only difference I would say is that like I would say most lizards, once they hit the 1 year mark, you can definitely say they're an adult. They're usually, by the time you hit a year, they're almost always fully grown. They're not going to grow much more. Like they're eating an adult diet. That's very true for all lizards. For all snakes, that is not true. Like when they're about a year old, they could still have 3, 4, 5 feet to grow. They could still have, you know what I mean? It's like I would say the snake growth rate in terms of like reaching adulthood is much longer. Like most snakes don't reach sexual maturity size if they're not being, power fed and all that stuff. If they're being healthily fed, they, usually won't reach sexual maturity depending on species until like 2, 3, sometimes 4 years.
Yeah. And that makes sense too with like the lifespan associated with a snake versus a lizard, and even with lizards there's some that take longer, like the monitors are going to definitely take longer than a year. Even like Legionna's geckos, I feel like they're over a year as well until they're like like full grown. So very variable.
We're working with generalizations here.
So one topic that I know we've mentioned previously is food.
Yes.
Like baby food versus adult food. So like frequency is the first thing that comes to mind when we were talking about like reptile chores and everything, and how we were both like we got babies after having adults for a while, of like forgetting how time consuming it is to have to feed babies more often.
Yeah, because I got Nessie, my African fat tail gecko, when like I had only adults for like at least like 2 or 3 years. Yeah. And so making that switch, people don't talk about it enough.
That's something I'm a little nervous for these hatchlings, because they're supposed to eat twice a day.
Constantly.
And again, this is the difference of why like breeders versus keepers, because like that's a lot to ask of a keeper. So most babies, for lizards at least, are eating daily.
Yeah.
And then what would you say is like average frequency for snakes?
For snakes, again, like hatchling, I don't know, because I've never had a hatchling, but
like from like that 3+ month.
From the 3+ month mark, it's definitely weekly. Sometimes depending on the species, it could be twice a week in the early, like really younger stage. But I would say the most consistent that everyone knows is usually like, if they're being sold to you, they should have already been fed through that like really difficult time. You should receive a snake that's well established that should only be eating between 7 to 10 days. Like if you have to feed them more than that, you're definitely buying a very young snake.
See? Good to know. Good to know. So yeah, frequency, and then also the types of food that you're feeding them. So as much as like when we go to expos and we see like the pinkies and stuff like that, as much as it like kind of breaks my heart,
I know.
they're also kind of adorable.
They're
like,
very cute.
The little pinkies.
They're so tiny.
Yeah.
They're so itty bitty.
Which would be for either very small snakes or baby snakes.
Well, and just since we're talking about snakes, the babies, it really depends on, because baby snakes can be so tiny. Like so tiny. I don't even think people can grasp how tiny some of these snake species can be. So like there are some species, for example, I think that hognoses are one of them.
Oh, that makes sense, because adults are pretty small.
Adults are 2 to 3 feet, usually max. So like the babies are really tiny, and hognoses are notorious for like not being great at getting on to like feeder rodents. And that's because in the wild, they, you know, their main diet is amphibians, and nobody's really like feeding their snakes amphibians. So, you know, anyway, sometimes what breeders will have to do is get them to eat a rat tail.
Oh my gosh, itty bitty.
Itty bitty, because they're so small that even like the baby mice or the baby, like there are some snake species that when they are born, they are so small that they can't even eat like a whole pinky.
Wow.
Which is wild.
Because pinkies are tiny.
Yes. And so,
wow.
Exactly. So that's just like fun fact. Some, and again, I don't know exactly which species. I don't know that there's so many variables, but I do know that is a thing for baby, tiny hatchling snakes sometimes, just to get them to start eating. Sometimes they have to go with that. Yeah.
I love when I learn something new on the episodes.
And there's like all kinds of other stuff. Like they'll often have to like scent them with like amphibian stuff, because that's what they're expecting. And so there's all kinds of little things, and getting hatchling snakes to eat is a literal full-time job. It is like that's why I will never breed snakes. No, thank you. That is too much stress for me. But,
understood.
Yeah.
So your feeders are going to be very different for a baby. Now, if we're going into lizards, we're typically dealing with bugs more often than not. And luckily, you can get like pinhead crickets. I think a lot of people sleep on the fact that you can get like teeny tiny superworms.
People sleep on that so
and
hard.
Teeny tiny dubia nymphs are like so incredibly small. And I think people sometimes when they're first getting into the hobby, and understandably so, are unaware that you can buy your bugs online, and that you're not limited to just what is at the store and the sizes that are in the store. So I would encourage you, like, if you're considering getting a baby, like explore online options, because your variety of feeders increases, but also the sizes available also.
Totally.
There's way more to choose from.
Totally. Yeah. No, there's a huge variety. I completely agree. People sleep on the tiny little superworms, because it's funny, because I just don't use mealworms as often. I usually use superworms, and people will ask that, and I'm like, guys, you can get superworms very small. You can get them very small. Like people will say, oh, like my gecko's too small to, eat the superworms yet. And I'm like, no, they're not.
You just gotta get the small ones.
Just get the babies.
Also, black soldier fly larvae.
Those are fabulous for babies.
Also very small. The nymphs, pinhead crickets. The only thing I'd stay away from are hornworms, just because those grow so fast that like your baby's not going to be able to eat them fast enough. If you have adults, then you could buy extra small hornworms, feed a couple to your baby until they get too big, and then feed them to your adults.
And not only are black soldier fly larvae really, small and good size for babies, they also are a fantastic feeder for like a source of calcium. You don't even have to like dust them with crickets, because they're so chock full of calcium. So.
Yeah.
Or did I say dust with crickets? I meant dust with calcium.
I don't know.
I think I said dust with crickets,
My
which makes
brain
no sense.
Did not even flag that.
I immediately was like, hold on, did I just say that? I don't know. We'll find out when we edit. But
to be clear, with
dust with calcium.
Yes.
Don't dust your worms with crickets. That makes no sense.
Oh my gosh. No. And then for our New Caledonian species, gecko food is a big thing. And so a common thing I see with baby keepers is they're not eating.
Yeah.
And when you're using like the large dishes, it can look like your baby's not eating much because they're so little.
Also, like, it's crazy, but the New Caledonian geckos in particular, like, if you're feeding them a large amount, like you said, the large cup, like, it's never going to look like they've eaten anything because quite frankly, like, they don't eat that much. They're not going to eat. They're never going to, even my adults don't even eat the whole bowl. You know what I mean? So like, you just have to be aware, as long as they're pooping, as long as they're active and they're drinking water, they're eating.
And you can also use like a little water bottle cap or something that's much smaller
to help you gauge it.
And then you can just fill that. It's so little,
just a tiny bit,
little bit of food, and then you'll be able to see probably a more obvious like chunk missing from that. If
you're like, it's like really stressing you out because you're not witnessing them eating, like, or you're not witnessing like the food deplete, you know.
Yep.
You definitely can just do a smaller amount if that will ease your brain.
Yeah, and then just as a general rule for our like bugs and even like chopped up vegetables or whatever it is, like you don't want anything bigger than the width between their eyes.
I forget about that little rule.
Yeah, which is because a lot of people are like, I don't know what size to get. And I'm like, I can't really help you because I can't see
your animal,
and I also don't know what size bugs and how big those are and everything. So just a general rule, nothing bigger than the width between their eyes. It can be longer, like a superworm can be longer.
That's fine.
You're just looking at the width because anything could be a choking hazard.
Yep.
And that same thing if you're doing like a salad for your beardy, like making sure that you're
chopping
everything small enough pieces that they can, chew it.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put that. I was going to come up with a more clever way to say it, but that's just the gist of it, is just make sure they can chew it.
Exactly.
And then quantity of food. So like baby reptiles don't really get fat.
No, they can't. They're burning so much energy, like,
and
growing.
They're trying to grow so quickly. So don't be afraid of like too many treat bugs or feeding them too much. Or
honestly, that really only becomes a problem when they're like older. Yeah. So I would not even worry.
Yeah, and obviously you want variety. Like I wouldn't just go full like waxworms for them. Making sure you have a variety and like gauging what the general recommendation for food is. But if your baby eats a little more or a little less, like as long as they're consistently pooping, growing, shedding, then like
you'll be okay.
Wouldn't sweat it.
Yeah, I would say you need to start worrying about like the fat content and like the types of feeders and all those more specific details. I would say once you hit like the 1 year mark.
Exactly.
So
okay, another fun topic, enclosures. Babies versus adults.
Okay, I have thoughts.
Let's hear it.
And this is again from like the perspective of like baby snakes, right? Containing a small baby snake is a very different situation than containing a large big snake, right? So like if you're someone that has like sliding glass doors or even sliding PVC doors, like whatever the material is, be aware baby snakes can usually wriggle their way through that tiny crack. You may think that they cannot. I guarantee you they can.
Tell the story time.
It is. Like, so Taz is my corn snake, right? And I would say this.
I'm smiling because I already know this story and it's hilarious.
I feel like I might have shared it before. I don't know. But
it was the escaping reptiles episode.
I was like, I swear we've talked about this before. Yeah. So
still funny.
Specifically like corn snakes. And like colubrids. It's the colubrids.
Little sneaky buggers.
They are so sneaky. If there is a tiny, tiny crack, just be aware they can get through it. Because I had Taz the first night that I got him. It was your birthday. Yes. So I had sat with Taz in my lap at her birthday dinner in like a little tiny bag under my shirt because the restaurant was really cold and I obviously couldn't leave him in the car. And so I was just sitting there eating my breakfast dinner with
all
her,
my friends
with
who are
all of her
completely
friends,
unaware.
And I just had a snake in my shirt. And I was like, ridiculous. And then this was during my like incredibly social era where I was like going out like 3 nights a week. And so immediately after
birthday dinner, then you go home, then
and
you're
then
like
I
going out.
I had to go home, get my baby snake set up, get dressed, and then go out. And I had like friends coming to like my place before we went out. And so I had gotten Taz like all set up. I had this little tub. It was like perfect size. It had some climbing room for him. He was smaller than pencil thin, you guys. Like he was so small. And I had him in this tub and I was like, oh, this tub is very secure. It's one of the tubs that has like the little latches on the side. I think it was like a hefty tub.
I have the exact same one. I know exactly what you're talking about.
They really should sponsor me at this point. I talk about hefty tubs so much. But
coming to you soon, new sponsor for the podcast.
Please. But with the latches, you think that it is like so secure and you look and like it doesn't even look like there's a crack. Like it's touching, it's all. I came downstairs. This was when I lived in like my little townhouse. And so I went downstairs. My friends got there. I like have everybody come in. We like are hanging out for a minute and they want to go see like my new baby snake. And I was like, sure. So I take everybody upstairs to the reptile room. I walk in the door and Taz is literally just sitting on top of the tub, just on top of it. Like, hey, what's up? Just hanging out. How you doing, new mom? Like, I am so grateful that they wanted to see him because I would have left the house with him out.
Yes.
It was like
never to be seen again.
Never to be seen again. My brand new, beautiful, scaleless corn snake, I would have lost my mind.
Oh, yeah.
And so like, thank God my friends wanted to like go see him. And so I ended up having to like, I don't even remember what I did. I luckily think I had like some extra setup or something and I like taped that sucker down. Anyway, so long story short, just be aware with baby snakes that like you may have the perfect enclosure. Your enclosure might be great. It might have all the clutter. It might be bioactive. It might be beautiful. It might be a literal like exoterra with the doors secured, everything. I don't care. If there is the tiniest gap anywhere, you better tape that sucker up. Like that
Speaking
is just
from personal experience.
Personal experience. And I think it was Mia's Mini Zoo on TikTok had made a video of her corn snake. She uses the sliding glass doors. It's, one of those enclosures. And she had duct taped the front crack because her snake had gotten out.
See?
It is such a thing.
So just be mindful of those baby animals.
Yes.
And just be extra, extra secure.
Just know, containing a baby snake is nothing like containing an adult snake. An adult snake is so easy to contain.
Well, yeah.
I have like trauma from Taz getting out so many times.
Understandably so.
Yeah. So just be aware. And then we'll get into the actual like enclosure size of it all. But
yeah, which is typically babies are usually in smaller enclosures and then people will move them into larger enclosures. Again, very dependent on the species, on the individual animal, and also at what age you buy them in that baby range. Obviously, very broad term. With chameleons, like at 3 months old, they'd be fine in a 2x4, which is what most adults are in.
Yeah.
But if you're hatching from an egg, which a lot of people are doing that, don't recommend.
That's a whole other topic we'll discuss one day.
Don't recommend.
Please don't.
But then that I wouldn't put a hatchling directly into like a 2x4. So there may be intermediate steps, but like a baby gecko that's already a few months old would be fine in an adult enclosure. It's more for us of being able to see them. Yeah. So you just have to be okay with like, as long as you're finding poop and you're seeing food being eaten, that you're okay that you may not see your reptile all the time.
It's funny because like I personally, it really just the enclosure size that you want to go with, like you said, depending on the size of the animal and like what stage they're at, it really is a personal decision of like, are you more comfortable with them starting out in a smaller enclosure so that you have a better eye on them, you have a better eye on their poops, their eating, all of those things? Or do you want to like, save money by just getting the big enclosure from the get-go? It really just depends. And it also depends on the animal. Because like with snakes, like the general rule of thumb, there's a very outdated rule that is, the fact that you have to like move them up or else they're not going to eat because, of all the space. The reality is you can usually put them in a bigger enclosure from the get-go if you wanted to, as long as you are providing it with enough hiding spaces, enough clutter and coverage so that they feel safe. They're usually going to eat and be okay. And, not everybody provides the proper clutter and coverage and all those things. But like I personally have learned over time that like I just prefer to start them a little bit smaller so that I can keep a better eye on them.
Right.
It sucks for me because I'm spending money on a bunch of enclosures.
Yeah, and it's not going to make a big difference to the animal in the grand scheme. Yeah. I tend to, like I said, I work, mostly with chameleons and geckos. Right. So, like, I tend to put them right into their adult enclosures, and they do fine. But I've totally gotten the panicked messages of, like, people who don't see them eating or can't find them. And when we're providing clutter for a baby, that's different than clutter for an adult. You're going to need a lot more plant coverage. You're going to need thinner branches than you would for an adult. You may need more hides, smaller hides than you would for an adult. So like how you go about building an enclosure for a baby is going to be different. And then as the reptile gets bigger, you're going to have to adjust their enclosure to accommodate their new size. Like that plant they used to hold their weight won't anymore because now they're smushing it because they're heavier. So now you're going to have to put a branch there instead, and then the plant is more coverage.
Like, realistically, whatever enclosure, like from the get-go, if you're, say you're getting a 4x2x2 for a ball python, right? If it's a baby, like you said, you're going to set it up differently. So the way I look at it, I would rather have like the smaller setup with from the beginning with it set up for the baby, and then set up the big enclosure for the adult, not for the baby, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that is totally...
And that's like my prerogative. Yeah. That's like my preference.
One way to do it.
Yeah. So it's like, it really is like a personal thing, and like only you can kind of figure that out. But yeah, so I don't know.
Yep. That's what I had on there.
Oh, one other pro tip, and this is in general on enclosures, and this isn't about enclosure sizes, but for the security of the baby, like you said, you are going to have to do more coverage. They need to feel more secure because they're younger, they're more afraid, they're more timid. I always recommend this for pretty much any reptiles. If you're going with a glass enclosure, I always recommend using black vinyl on the two sides and the back of it just to help them feel secure. This is especially even more important with babies. So just added little tip.
Yep. I know you like the look of the black vinyl.
Oh yeah, but you can use whatever vinyl you want. You can also do like
a printed background or something. Yeah. Like you can get
whatever
as creative as you want.
Whatever you want it to look like.
But it makes them feel secure in there, and that's the ultimate.
Yes.
Ultimate goal.
Thank you for that clarity.
Oh, it's your aesthetic, your vibe.
I use black vinyl, so that's what I say. Yeah. But you can really use whatever, just as long as those sides and the back are covered, that's going to help them a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have you guys checked out the Palm Street app yet? Pangea is going live in the Palm Street app every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. They'll be doing giveaways every 10 minutes, and geckos are starting at $1. They also have the cheapest shipping for reptiles on the Palm Street app, and they don't even charge extra shipping for additional geckos. And don't miss their free shipping on dry goods supplies purchased in their store. Hey, reptile girlies, if you're tired of explaining why your spare room looks like a mini Jurassic Park, meet Scratches, the social app where exotic pet owners find their people.
Just add photos of you and your scaly babies, set your filters to reptiles, and start scrolling through local pet parents who get it. No more awkward first date explanations about your ball python collection or why you have a cricket farm.
Whether you're looking for friendship, romance, or someone who can pet sit your beauty, your community is just a match away.
Download Scratches today and start connecting with reptile people in your area. Available on iOS and Android. Okay, and then screen climbing. I know this is kind of unique to chameleons.
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
No, because I caught Scooby, my Chihuahua gecko, on the ceiling climbing the screen like 2 nights ago.
Oh.
Little psycho.
Okay, so. Well, he's also not a baby.
I know, but I'm just saying, but it's like, it's not just.
No, it happens. I'm sure other species do.
Geckos do it too, apparently.
I wonder if there's like a snake equivalent. So you let me know. But for chameleons, we see this with babies, and they go upside down and they'll climb the screen, and so then that puts them at risk for being burned by their heat bulb. So like another thing when we're building out their enclosures is everything you said, right? The branches, hiding places, all that. But you may need to be raising your heat bulb up, and then I think that's also a good segue into like heat and babies. But is there any like snake behavior as a baby that kind of happens?
The only thing I can really think of is for babies in particular. I'm thinking for a couple of the enclosures that I have, it depends on the type of enclosure you have, but some enclosures, even for snakes, have the heat bulbs mounted on the inside of the enclosure. And if that's the case with snakes, you're almost always using what's called a heat guard, which is like a little cage around the heat.
Yep.
But depending on the type of heat guard that you're using, some of those little holes might not be big enough or small enough to
they
keep
could,
them
like,
out. Yes. So you want to be very careful because the equivalent would be them wrapping themselves around the light bulb. So
they just fry themselves.
Yeah. So you obviously don't want to do that. So if you are using an enclosure with the mounts on the inside, honestly, I probably just wouldn't recommend that for a baby anyway. But if you're going to be doing that, just make sure that your heat guard is it's like tiny little chicken wire. Like it has to be like, just make sure there's no possible way that your animal can squeeze in. And like I said, with the enclosure doors and baby snakes escaping.
That's terrifying.
If it is not, if it's even remotely close to the size of their, like the smallest part of their body, just don't do it. Just don't do it. No. You'll be very sad.
All I'm picturing in my head is upside down Scooby currently climbing.
It was literally like 2 nights ago. I've
never seen Pluto climb on his screen.
No,
so
Scooby's just a little bit of a psycho. I think
Spidey Scooby.
Once Monkey was gone, Scooby was like, well, I guess I have to take the psycho brain cell.
Oh, he's doing a great job at it. No, that's what's in my head. So speaking of heat, another thing too is the temperatures for babies are going to be a little bit more conservative and cooler. I mean, they're still warm, but like cooler than they would be for an adult. And what you use for a heat source as a baby may need to be modified as an adult, especially if you're using overhead heating and then your reptile is able to get closer to it solely because they're getting bigger or an area that wasn't accessible to them before is now climbable. Right. So it's just too often that I see someone set up a baby enclosure and it's perfect temperature wise.
Then don't adjust it.
And then they get burned and then that's a whole thing.
No, 100%. And like I would even say depending on, again, I'm kind of like speaking from like the snake perspective, but depending on your setup, babies might potentially do a little bit better with the heating pads. I'm usually not a big fan of like recommending heating pads, but for babies, sometimes that is better, especially like during the quarantine phase. That can sometimes be like an easier route. And it is just as long as it's regulated with the thermostat, sometimes the more reliable, like from that standpoint, they're less likely to burn themselves if anything goes wrong as like a baby.
Right, I hear you.
But overhead heat always, for the most part, halogen bulbs are really great, but you do have to just make sure that, it's not a potential burn risk. So
Yep. So there's something to monitor as they get bigger and you may need to make adjustments. Just some heavy hitters. Babies are going to poop more.
Yeah.
They're going to shed more often. And as a general, they're growing faster, right? Their growth rate is going to be faster. So they're going to be shedding more frequently.
Totally.
And then that will slow down. And then a lot of new keepers will freak out because they're like, they haven't
shed. He hasn't shed in 6 months. And it's like, because they're older now. So that makes sense.
So totally, or like they haven't pooped in 2 weeks or whatever it is. So like just be very mindful that that's going to change.
I think Hazel's at a point where she only sheds like twice a year, maybe maximum, because she's pretty much full grown.
My Chameleons are like twice a year.
Yeah.
So. But then babies are like once a month at least.
Right.
So personalities is another thing I want to talk about.
Oh, okay.
So like babies tend to be, you kind of mentioned touched on this, but like skittish or jumpier or more fearful. And then we can kind of see a shift as they get older of being like more confident or more defensive or more comfortable, depending if you're working with them and they're just natural defensive behavior. But I think that's kind of interesting. It's something I've noticed.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Like, I mean, like you said, they're just much more skittish. It really just depends on your snake's personality, because some as babies will be confident. It really just depends, but they're almost always more skittish. Almost always. Even snakes, pretty much everything. Like, and I mean, baby corn snakes, like they are wiggly little suckers.
No, we go to expos and they're like, do you want to hold it? And I'm like, no.
I love Taz. He's my one colubrid. I really love him. He's wonderful. He, is a great snake. I adore him. However, I will probably never have a colubrid again, just because the quickness with which they move.
Yeah.
And as babies, Taz was so squirrely.
I know. I remember that. And I'm like,
oh my gosh. It was just crazy, like, and because he was just skittish and he wasn't confident. He didn't know that, I'm not going to hurt him. Like he was just trying to get out of my hands at all possible. Unfortunately for me, he was just really fast. So just be aware that, especially with the snakes, if I always recommend corn snakes because they are such great eaters and they're great snakes to have. And they're really good for beginners because they are such good eaters. But if you don't like squirmy, busy, super fast reptiles, then like a colubrid is not going to be for you.
Same with New Caledonian geckos versus other gecko species.
Yep.
They're also very skittish and jumpy. And once you learn the body language, it's fine. Same with colubrids. But a baby New Caledonian is going to be on another level compared to a more established older one. So it's just something to consider when you're kind of like deciding which direction you want to go.
This is actually really funny because I had just had friends over for brunch like a couple days ago, and they wanted to see the reptile room. They hadn't come over to the house for the first time, so I took them in, and I had opened Poke's enclosure because they wanted to see her. You know, per usual, when somebody comes into the reptile room, they're like, I don't see any of them. And I'm like, yeah, because it's like 10 a.m. and they're sleeping. Like this
bedtime.
it's their midnight. Like they're busy. And so I was like kind of shining the light. She's got this like cork round that she lives in. And so I was showing it to them, and one of my girlfriends was like, I'm so scared she's gonna like jump out. And I was like, she will not. Scooby, I won't even open the door. Okay. I was like, so trust me, this one will not. And so again, it's like personality based. Scooby's never, or sorry, Poke has never been jumpy.
No.
Scooby has always been a little jumpy.
As someone who has pet sat for you on many occasions, I will have Poke's door wide open.
Oh yeah, free range.
And I'm like spraying,
She's fine.
Whatever. And then Scooby's, I like crack it. And I have eyes on him at all times. Because he's moving around as I'm like trying to mist down his enclosure.
He gets crazy.
And I wait till he's in like one corner so I can put his food dish in there, you know? So as someone who's like, they're not even mine, just as you
just know the personalities.
Yep.
And if you want a really funny laugh, Scooby did bust out the other night, and I posted it on TikTok and Instagram, so feel free to check that out. But I was redoing their plants, and he was up in the top corner, and I gave him way too much credit, and I gave him way too much trust.
You knew.
I knew. He was in the top right corner right by the door, and I thought that I could slip my hand in there and make it work, and it was a dumb decision.
He's like, bye, Mom.
He's so fast. But after I was, your initial panic when that happens, you kind of freak out. But he sat on the neighboring enclosure for like an hour and he didn't even move. So I was like, cool, we good. I'm just going to, I was like,
wanted to take in the surroundings.
Yeah. I literally just looked at him. I was like, you chill there. I'll be fixing your home. Let me know when you're ready to come back. Like,
I'll give you a nice escort back to you.
And he went back in he like, as soon as he calmed down, it was fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they all have different personalities and you'll learn that over time. But in general, the babies are almost always jumpy, a little skittish, a little crazy.
To be expected. Yeah. And then just the last thing I wanted to touch on, I think you maybe had some notes on your side, was just the fragility of babies. And now this kind of again is the difference between hatchling and true baby, like what we're referring to as babies. But like the hatchlings are going to be way more fragile. So like please do your homework on like what age range is going to be setting you up for success for babies, and just recognize babies are going to be a little bit more fragile than an established adult's going to be. So.
Yeah. And like you said, my only note on the fragility of it in particular is like just the temperature differences, like the potential for burn, like the size changes, all of that. But I did have one other thing, which is like, just be aware. And I feel like this is kind of an obvious one, but if you're new to reptile keeping, it might not be, but you don't always know the sex or the gender of a baby. Like you almost always will. I honestly, off the top of my head, I can't even think of a reptile species that you do know the gender right away.
Veiled chameleon.
Thank you. Yes. Okay.
That's my contribution to the.
Yeah.
To that. Yep.
Yeah. I think snakes can be depending on like hemipenes and stuff, but you don't usually want to pop those for a while.
Veiled, for anyone who doesn't know, have tarsal spurs. So it's like a little bump on their back feet, and that's right out of the egg. And the males will have a tarsal spur and the females won't, so you can sex them immediately out of the egg.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, but most other reptile species, I would say more than less. Like it's usually most species, you really don't know the gender until they're probably like, it again varies by species, but I would say like 3 to 6 months.
And a lot of them you end up buying unsexed because by the time, because you want the baby, but then you don't know, and so you have to be okay with it. And if it's a species, for example, a crested gecko, I bought Pluto at 1.5 years old. He was for sure a male, but I very much went into purchasing a crested gecko. Not knowing whether or not they'd be male or female, because I was planning on buying like a juvenile. So it just depends on the the species. But then like chameleons, you would know at like 3-4 months for sure, you know, depending whatever. So
and so like you said, you kind of went into shopping knowing that you might not know, and just be aware that sometimes breeders will list, like for example, snakes. They will estimate. They'll say like, I'm pretty sure that's a male. I'm pretty sure that's a female. Like stuff like that. So just be aware that even if you are told a gender, there's no guarantee. Like, and for example, Nilla, I'm at this point, I have had Nilla for going on like 6 years. So I'm pretty positive that she's a female because I've never found a sperm plug, but I technically have no idea.
Right.
I have no clue. And really with blue tongue skinks, the only way I can find out is if I ever put her in with a confirmed male or confirmed female to see. And I'm never going to do that because I'm never going to breed her. So it's like, I'm just well aware that I'm claiming.
But Nilla gives off girly vibes.
She does.
I don't know how to explain that.
No, she gives off sassy girly vibes. But like, 100%.
Just like deep down,
I know.
You know.
I know she's a female.
If you came to me tomorrow, I'm like, so it's been confirmed Nilla's a male. I'd be like, what?
No way. I wouldn't believe it.
It's just to my core.
I know.
she's a female, but
she is. She just gives sassy girl vibes. I got her out for my friends the other day too. They had their little daughter over, and she got to see her, and it was so cute because she was kind of like sticking her tongue out with Nilla. Nilla was doing the little tongue thing, and she was like, I was like, see, girl energy. She's a girl's girl.
Yes, she totally is.
She handled it very well. She does great.
I love that. I love that.
It was so cute. So
I can smell whatever Logan's cooking for dinner right now, and it smells delicious.
I'm pretty sure we're having filet. So sorry.
I'm gonna go home and have Taco Bell. No, I don't know what I'm having for dinner yet.
We found this like great frozen grocery store where they have like all the meats frozen. So now we just like have great meat frozen all the time. It's the best.
It smells good. So we should move on to the next thing so you can go eat your.
Getting hungry. Let's go.
your dinner. So we have the question that we didn't get to answer in the last episode, which was that girly topic.
Yes.
So this is a fun one. And please play along in the comments. And for any of our people who aren't into the makeup, like,
that's okay.
Feel free to fast forward.
Yeah, feel free to skip. But I think we'll also put a graphic on our Instagram as well, asking some of these too. So double check if that's been posted yet, and feel free to leave a comment and let us know.
On socials too. We try to put like fun Q&As and like whatever else on there. But the question is, if you could only pick one to put on for the day and go out into a public event, what would it be? With your options being 1, your eyebrows, 2, eyeliner, 3, lipstick. I'll go as far as say lip gloss, whatever. Mascara, or I lost count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Foundation.
Oh, this is so hard because
only one.
And this is so hard because there's also blush. There's also concealer. We're like leaving things out.
Yes, I feel like these were like because I don't think you would wear just blush. I feel like
I would.
Okay,
I totally would. Okay. I totally would. I'm a blush girly.
Just a little rosy.
Totally would.
Cheek moment.
And quite frankly, this answer fully depends on so many things. Because if it was concealer instead of foundation, I would say concealer. I would choose concealer. But because that's not an option, I'm going to choose either foundation or mascara.
Okay.
And the reason being is just I am a girly who has very dark under eye circles. And I live and die by my concealer.
I feel that's my core.
Yes. I have naturally like dark under eye circles. They cannot like, I'm hoping that my wellness journey like cures them, right? Like who knows? But I have to have concealer. Like I will actually choose just concealer over foundation sometimes. Like if I'm in a hurry, I'll just do concealer, blush, mascara.
I'm tracking that, yeah.
But because foundation is like full coverage. That's like the whole face. I rarely need that unless I'm like really trying to like look cute.
Yep, I hear you.
But that's why I'm so hesitant.
Okay.
So if concealer is not an option, I will go with mascara. But if I had to choose between like concealer or foundation, I would choose concealer.
Okay. Maybe we could do a swap for you.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
My answer would for sure be mascara.
Yeah.
Because I have blonde eyelashes.
I forget about this.
And so I look kind of scary, in my opinion, right?
I've seen you without your mascara and you're fine. It's not scary.
But for me,
I hear you.
Because I'm so used to seeing them in like, when I'm like, like they're blonde see-through and it's like there's not even a little hint of mascara on there, and I'm like, where are my eyelashes? I don't know. And so I feel a little alien. So at the very minimum I just put a little mascara on just to be like, look, I have them. They're there.
No, that's totally fair. No, that's super fair. But man, I can't do without blush.
I hear you. I don't know. But if I was doing like a quick like minimum like makeup no makeup look, it would be mascara, a little concealer under
me too.
the eyes as well, and then maybe a little blush on the cheeks, and I'd be like,
those are my top 3.
I'd be like, when I cover my bases.
When I'm trying to run out of the house quick, that's my go-to. So I'm gotta get my under eyes covered, gotta get a little bit of glimmer in my eyes with some mascara, and then brighten up the cheeks a little.
That checks all the boxes. I'm not a big lip gloss.
You know what's
person,
so funny?
So.
I was back in 2015 to 2018, back in the Kylie Jenner lip kit era. I was a huge matte lipstick girly.
Okay.
I was rocking all the lipstick all the time, and I loved it. That version of me is now dead and buried. I could never. I still have a bunch of them.
LIP.
Yeah, literally.
Just not my thing, but I know there's plenty of other girlies, so let us know.
And I will say, in defense of lipstick, that is the fastest way that you can make yourself look pulled together. Is like, I know there are a lot of girlies out there who will choose mascara and lipstick because it looks like they have almost a full face on without having to go the extra, mile for the concealer and the foundation and all that stuff.
And I have some friends who live and die by their eyebrows. Like they have to have their eyebrows on.
I mean, don't get me wrong, my eyebrows are very important as well, but if that was like, that's just to me one of the lesser important things, because my eyebrows on their own are usually okay. They just require a little bit of touch.
Just a little shaping.
Just a little shaping. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. And then we have one more would you rather. It's just like a fun little reptile-y one. Okay.
I love this one.
Would you rather have a pet lizard that loves cuddles or a pet snake that follows you everywhere?
I have a really hard time with this one, if I'm being honest, because I would love a lizard that snuggles, but I actually think I'm going to go with the snake that follows you everywhere.
I think that's my answer as well.
Really? Oh, yeah. I'm surprised by that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And my thought process is I have a snuggly dog.
Yes.
Like Ember is so snuggly.
Yes.
Like she's very affectionate, very snuggly, and like loves to be right up next to me when we're like having TV time. And she's never just like laid on, she's like
right
on me
on you,
and has been that way since a puppy. So like she is so snuggly that I feel like my snuggle meter
is maxed out,
like full with her.
Totally.
Now, if I didn't have an affectionate pet
100%
in some other capacity, then I feel like just like as a human, I would want some sort of affection, like snuggly.
See, and this is why, because my dog Campbell is like, he's snuggly in the sense that he's like clingy. He wants to always be around, and he wants to always be like this. He wants to be like right here, but he never wants to be on me. He wants to be touching me and as close as possible, but he doesn't want to be like on top of me. And I do crave him being on top of me sometimes, to the point where I will pull him on top of me and he immediately adjusts and is like, I don't like that. So I hate that. So I would really like a lizard with cuddles, but I also would love to be the cool snake girl that would bring the snake with me everywhere, and it was just a chill snake that could come everywhere. Yeah. That would be so sick.
I'm also picturing maybe like a snuggly blue tongue skink.
Oh,
I feel like
I would love
with their little corgi legs. I feel like would be very cute little snuggly lizards.
And I will say, I have in the past, I did take Nilla to my big girl job when my business now is a big girl job, but you know what I mean.
Corporate, if you want to put it that way. Office job.
It was an ad agency. Ad agencies are like so not corporate vibes at all. I've only worked in true corporate situations a couple of times, but I did take her and Barney and Charlie have been in like shoots for previous like agency clients and things like that. And so I had taken her Nilla one day to the office for a shoot, and she got all wrapped up in a little burrito, like a towel, and she sat in my lap all day. Almost all day. And she kind of like fell asleep. She was totally fine. So like if she were super snuggly, I would really like that. So
yeah,
maybe I'll change my answer. If Nilla was snuggly, I think that's my answer.
Yeah. I think both are great.
Both are
great
so fun.
scenarios.
You really can't go wrong.
Yeah. So again, let us know. We'll probably post it on socials. Feel free to chime in over there or leave us a comment on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're tuning in to the episode. But otherwise, I think that's
wraps us up.
A wrap for this episode. So let us know your thoughts, babies versus adults. Have you kept babies? Have you kept adults? What are some things that you've done to adjust your care or changes you've noticed? We always love to hear from
whatever you think like the biggest difference is, in babies and adults. So let us know.
Always, thank you guys so much for tuning in, watching the Wild Type podcast with yours truly, Neptune the Chameleon.
Lyssa's Lizards.
You can follow the podcast on all the socials at the Wild Type podcast. Feel free to leave us a review, subscribe if you want to be notified over on YouTube. Spotify has videos now too, though, so feel free to wherever you're at, watch and listen.
We also offer early access if you want access a week early to all the videos, all the episodes.
Cute merch.
Yeah, all the things. Yeah. So we'll catch you girlies later.
Bye.